Hey guys. After Charlottesville this week, I am seeing a country divided in a manner that is unprecedented in my lifetime. Racial tensions are horrible, and it really feels like, as a nation, we are on the precipice of a full-blown civil war. This attack was a perfect opportunity for leftists to say that all conservatives and the entirety of the Trump administration have always been secretly racist, no matter how fast we come out in droves to denounce the actions of this literally schizophrenic white supremacist. A leftist journalist from Vice interviewed Christopher Cantwell. He's an alt-right figure that spoke at the rally. And you can tell that the journalist was trying to associate fringe racist groups with the broader Trump administration. She was notably surprised by this statement.
I'm here to spread ideas, talk, in the hopes that somebody more capable will come along and do that. Somebody like Donald Trump, who does not give his daughter to a Jew.
So Donald Trump, but like more racist.
A lot more racist than Donald Trump. I don't think that you could feel about race the way I do and watch that Kushner bastard walk around with that beautiful girl, okay?
She says, like Donald Trump, but more racist. She's trying to show that real, legitimate racists identify with Trump because he is also racist. But you can tell by Cantwell's response that white supremacists don't really think that Trump is particularly racist, and especially not anti-Semitic, because he correctly points out that someone truly anti-Semitic would never allow a Jewish person to marry his favorite daughter, nor be welcomed into his household. This seems to give the journalist a bit of cognitive dissonance, because, like we're seeing in the media right now, this was meant to be the perfect opportunity to condemn Trump and blame him for all of the racial tensions that exist in America today. People on the left think that there's a large element of white supremacy on the right, but this really isn't true. Of course, you can find some, and sometimes they come out to rallies, but most people on the right do not fall within the fringe elements of right-leaning movements. They don't. There are a few thousand racist KKK members or self-identified neo-Nazis, which the left has now laser-focused on since the Charlottesville attack. There were an estimated 500 to 1,000 non-Antifa protesters of right-leaning persuasions in attendance at Charlottesville. Some of these people were identitarians, and some were of the KKK Nazi persuasion. But even if half of the crowd was as such, that is still a tiny group of individuals. The Southern Poverty Law Center, who you can bet is overcounting, estimates that there are only about 5,000 KKK members in the United States. I would be shocked if it was even 30% of this number. There are 323 million people in the United States. Let's say the SPLC is correct and there are 5,000 KKK members and a few thousand Nazis. Now, for comparison, think of the millions, probably tens of millions, that support communist and socialist rhetoric in this country. The professors, students, left-leaning corporations like Google are filled with them. We have large swaths of people in the US that outright support regimes that have killed 100 million people worldwide. It really puts the supposed racism problem that we have into perspective. This got me thinking. With racial tensions at an all-time high since the civil rights era, which it seems fairly obvious to me has largely been created through media hysteria, and with so many people falling into movements that they feel express their identity, is it even possible, as a country and a culture, to abandon identity politics, even assuming that the media stops stoking a race war, which I don't have any confidence that they will? I was seeing red when I read the Sam Harris tweet. In 2017, all identity politics is detestable, but surely white identity politics is the most detestable of all. This was a virtue signal of all virtue signals. Condemning all identity politics in and of itself is a virtue signal because in our heart of hearts, we know it is nearly impossible to disengage with fundamental parts of our identity, especially those so thoroughly reinforced through institutional learning. Additionally, Sam Harris had to specifically condemn white identity politics, which is somehow worse than other types, even though white people are more open-minded about abandoning certain parts of their identity than other groups. Before I get into it, and I hate doing this, but let's look at the definition of identity politics. A tendency for people of a particular religion, race, social background, etc. to form exclusive political alliances, moving away from traditional broad-based party politics. I disagree with the part of the definition that says to form exclusive political alliances. I think that people that engage in identity politics have the interest of their in-group in mind in all of their decision-making, and sometimes that means an unholy alliance or an alliance with a larger party that is not particularly compatible with said group's worldview. A perfect example of this is watching the Muslim community pool grievances with the LGBTQ community, even though Muslims hate gay people and homosexuality is punishable by death in several Muslim countries. That being said, the definition that I read is correct in the sense that people of certain groups often use their identity to make political decisions. Just like Sam Harris, I have seen a lot of pseudo-intellectual pandering on the topic of identity politics in Charlottesville. I've heard several political figures and commentators say, we need to abandon all identity politics, and most of the people that are saying this are white. I find this infuriating because it is a hollow verbal gesture that is only being made to denounce the actions of one insane Nazi. Asking people to abandon identity politics is asking them to not use the interests in their in-group to make community decisions. That's asking too much of people. How can you make any decisions about what is best for the people you care about without prioritizing their interests? I think this is why we most often hear the song and dance denouncing identity politics from white people. We're a group that has been told that we are inherently racist and that there is nothing that we can do but listen, to take a back seat, and periodically flog ourselves.
All white people are racist. So I put this up because I really want any white person in the room to know up front, this is what we're dealing with, that it's not going to be this coddling of white tears and what that looks like. We're not going to discuss, oh, maybe some of us have worked it out. No, you're always going to be racist, actually. I believe that white people are born into not being human, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons. So in this particular way, white people are all racist.
We're also a group that's been told that their ancestors are monstrous and they should have shame for their heritage, for their people, for their prosperity. We're a large group of people that is not as connected to our race or our heritage as other groups. The guilt complex that so many whites have developed strips us of racial pride and puts a wedge between white people and their identity. We're more likely to abandon it to curry favor with leftists, or in Sam Harris's case, to just virtue signal that we're not racist. If you were a black person in America and you had been told your whole life that this is your identity, that you and your community have never known anything but oppression, and that the problems within your community are all caused by white oppression, would you ever abandon this defining element of your identity in favor of adopting an overarching identity of this same country that had oppressed you and your people your whole lives? Of course not. I would imagine that black people and people of any minority group would feel that neglecting this part of their identity is traitorous to their group and compromises the safety and potential improvements that could be had within their communities. The left helped form their worldview and has made it all about identity, all about what was taken from them, all about how together they've survived oppression from evil white people. It has bound minority communities together against the white majority. For those that say that identity politics needs to be eliminated entirely, I ask you, how would you ever do this? I think that white people would be the only group that would be susceptible to this suggestion because they largely do not feel unified by race or religion anyway. So it may work for white people, but can you even imagine, after decade upon decade of subtle manipulation, that any minority group in the US would be open to the idea of leaving their personal and group interests at the door when making political decisions? It won't happen. I personally believe that you cannot force people to separate from their ethnic identity, their cultural identity, or their religious identity. For the most part, and especially in minority communities, these allegiances trump allegiance to country. What is the plan here? We're going to tell Black Americans that they shouldn't entangle their interests with their racial group or give preference to said group? They and all minority groups will outright reject this. There's no way to implement this anyway. To get people to abandon their ethnic or religious identity, the overarching culture has to be strong and cohesive and offer a future to its people that's worth fighting for. We have none of these things right now, and we can't ask human nature to turn itself on its head. People will always work for those closest to them, their friends and their families, their small communities, their racial groups, their religious ties. We cannot stop people from exhibiting in-group preference in political matters, especially not after exploiting them for over a century. I suspect that most people saying that identity politics can and should be eliminated know this, and know that white people will be less resistant to abandoning identity politics, and that this voting behavior will remain tied to in-group preferences within minority communities. And this is exactly what the left wants, and what Sam Harris revealed with his tweet. Identity politics for everyone, except white people. That way, minority groups can still be controlled and manipulated by the leftist elite, and white groups will have no standing because they will be ineffective due to their lack of cohesion and their resistance to adopting in-group preferences. I really believe that it's true that politics is downstream from culture. Political decisions and opinions that are formed are completely based on one sense of morality, which is indisputably influenced by your upbringing, culture, heritage, religion, whatever. As much as most people would like to have a country that does not engage in identity politics, it is completely unrealistic and utopian in a multicultural population. The people that are preaching that they want to eliminate identity politics know damn well that people make decisions on ethnic and cultural lines, and this only works when a society is homogenous enough or cohesive enough that the overarching Americanism is the common binding force amongst all people, irrespective of their ethnicity. So the only solution that is feasible here is to allow, but not encourage, all people to engage in any level of identity politics that they so choose. You must see that if we're going to embrace Black Lives Matter as a society, that similar but converse white supremacist groups will also exist under the same protections afforded to Black Lives Matter. I'm yet to hear anyone cut through this and say outright what they are thinking, which is that only white people should be barred from engaging in identity politics. Once again, this is totally unenforceable and there will be a huge backlash. But this institutional pressure, the mainstream media efforts to fan the flame between racial groups, this has to stop. If people break along identity lines, which I'm very confident they almost always will, I think they can coexist peacefully and represent their interests while getting along, but only if external forces stop trying to induce a riot. We need to value the individual. That is the heart of Americanism and the American dream. But acting like identity, racial or otherwise, can just be shed upon command, or even that we can choose to separate our identity from our morality, is unrealistic and intellectually dishonest. That being said, I liked what these women had to say.
How do you explain what your support is for a president, given the criticism that he's had on this race issue?
I think for myself, period. Nobody's going to tell me what to think or how to think. I'm not gullible and I'm not blind.
I honestly don't think we will see this issue of racial divide addressed until we remove identity politics out of the political process.
These Republican women say if a president deserves blame for making racial tensions worse, it's Obama, not Trump, for the identity politics they say Democrats have practiced for the last 8 years.
And she made an important distinction. She said that identity politics and rhetoric needs to stop on the government level. That much I agree with, and I think great strides could be taken in the improvement of race relations if the government and mainstream media didn't present all issues through the lens of race. And even though I agree with these women, my confidence that the media in particular, and to a lesser degree the government, can stop doing this is very low. Further, I think that within the general population, particularly the Black population, these women would probably be called Uncle Toms. You should see what people, especially other Black people, say to Tree of Logic. There's not a lot of tolerance for minorities that hold positions like this within their own communities. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Can we effectively eliminate identity politics? Is that unrealistic? Is it even a good idea? Is there a case to be made for employing identity politics? I would love to hear what you have to say about this. Thanks, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye.